Can everyone hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Chief.
The sound is really loud.
Okay,
Okay.
should be okay now.
All right. Okay, can you guys repeat and say again that whether you can hear me or not so I can.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, the volume's up properly now. Okay, so we got everything together? Is it the image?
Yeah, not showing.
I'm still popping in and out or not on the screen?
Not on the screen yet.
All right, then we can deal so they have more energy to fight. All right, welcome everyone to I guess which one is this? The 37th? 37th NSTHA forum, and more like the second new edition of the NSTHA forum. Okay, so I'm going to I should say pick up where I left off on the last forum with questions and answers, or questions and answers. Wow, questions and answers. All right. All right, so the first question for today, I think, is one that has to do. Oh, okay, can you read that one again?
Is it true that all beings from the other side or the other dimensions can see this realm? And they have abilities to hide and show themselves whenever they want to, or something is controlling them?
But anyway, yeah, having to do with the other side being able to see everyone here in the matrix in this frequency. And the question has to do with those on the other side, i.e. the density, and not everyone on the other side obviously is dense, especially not what's going on these days. But generally most of us on this side cannot see those on the other side. And that's what the question has to do with. So yeah, it's true that all of those who vibrate on the frequencies on the in between or the other side can see it, see us here when we can't see them. And it's almost as though everyone is conditioned to literally be blind to what's on the other side. And that's literally another form of the density stacking the deck. So for instance, in these days that my vision is not happening, or or blind. So it's another version of, like, for me, I don't see the camera, I don't see my assistants here, members here, but I can feel them. But the difference is I can hear them. I hope I'm not being confusing with this. So I can feel them and hear them, but I can't necessarily see them. In a lot of cases with people in the matrix, there are people, you may not be able to see the individuals on the other side who may be in the room with you, observing you, but in a lot of cases you can feel them. So if you walk into a room, by yourself and you feel uncomfortable, but the room seems to be empty, that's a sign that you're picking up the presence of something on the other side.
Oh.
That's in that particular space. So it's not 100% blind, but 100% blindness. But the way that the system is set up, they try to convince you that if you just feel a presence or sense of presence, that is not valid, or that that your imagination is running away with you or something like that. When in reality, you are sensing the other side. So you may not be able to see them physically, but in most cases, you can sense them. And I don't know if there's anyone in the audience who hasn't had a situation where they walk into a space, and generally by themselves, where, I mean, even if you're in the company of others, and all of a sudden you walk into a zone and it feels very different, and different in a way where it may make you uncomfortable. Or there's stories of people walking in homes, which, I mean, I think everyone here also could attest to that you walk into someone's house sometimes, or you walk into an empty home, or for instance, when I was house shopping years ago, the realtor would take me into a certain house, and as soon as you pass that threshold, all of a sudden the atmosphere changes. And 9 times out of 10, that means that there's some other presences in that space observing you as you come in. And I think even when it comes to that, I'm going to just deviate it just a little bit, that, a haunted house is not haunted 200, well, geez. A haunted house is not haunted 24/7 or 100% of the time. So there are a series of doorways everywhere on the planet. And so if you walk into a certain place, it's almost like you trip a tripwire, or a tripwire that will notify, let's say, Haunter's headquarters. And there's like, the Haunter's lounge where everyone's waiting to do their job or to jump into a certain location, whatever. So you walk into a place and you set off an alarm, let's say a silent alarm, or an alarm that only the density can hear wherever they are. And then all of a sudden you feel uncomfortable. Boom. But the way that it's sold in this realm, from movies and so on and so forth, a haunted house is haunted 100% of the time. No, they kind of work like a business. It's like, why waste energy if there's no one to actually extract essence from or scare the essence out of? So, there's not like a bunch of places where ghosts are sitting around just waiting for someone to show up. So in other words, they have a certain level of efficiency. You walk into a zone, and the alarm goes off, and it says, it's go time, showtime. They show up in their various spaces or whatever. And then, that's when for them the fun begins. They can start, making you nervous, which nervousness is a frequency, just like fear is a frequency. All negative emotions are frequencies, but also something of joy is a frequency as well. It's a little higher vibrating, well, I shouldn't say a little, but quite a bit higher vibration frequency than, for instance, fear and anger, nervousness and all of those. Okay, so excuse me, I'll cough for a second. So anyway, I think that with that question, can you just read the question again? Because as usual, I get started and then I start to travel. So I want to come right back to the initial question, which was again.
Is it true that all beings from the other side or the other dimensions can see this realm?
Okay, yeah. So literally, that's kind of when I said it's kind of the answer in a nutshell, really. But there's a lot of different things that I think I talked about on the first of the new forums, having to do with, if these guys, let's, look at it this way, if these guys are in a waiting room, and it almost reminds me a little bit of that movie Beetlejuice, where he has to go to some, it's like, office for ghouls or ghosts or something like that. And he's waiting for whatever. And he's, it's like a waiting room of ghouls and ghosts hanging around, just, waiting to, I don't know, I can't remember exactly what they were supposed to be in that room for. But let's say that same waiting room, that room is like the waiting room, similar to, you're just waiting to see the doctor, but you're waiting for your assignment. So they're sitting there, they're waiting for their assignment, and they have a certain type of glamour that may be what they really look like on the other side, or what they have a propensity to look like on the other side. Because you can see the same entity or the same ghost in your house, but they may look different from time to time. There's times when individuals will see, there's an old man showing up, and then there's another one that's a young child. They could be one and the same. It could be that particular entity shows up looking like an old man, And then when he finishes freaking out and getting that essence that he can out of whoever's affected by that, then the next time he shows up as a little girl and in a little dress from the 1800s or something like that. And I think that when I'm thinking about that particular scenario, I'm thinking also about psychics who come in and they'll. I mean, you have 9 different people here, and you can have a house full of entities. That's for sure. You definitely can, but that's not the case with all places. As well, most of the stories kind of vary, so it wouldn't be fair for me to say that they try to say it's exactly the same way. But when the psychic will come in, they can get played by spirits in the house also, and can be given false information. And there are psychics who will work with some being on the other side, some entity on the other side, and they figure, well, this entity is my guy or my person who gives me the information and tells me what's going on the other side and give me the history of the place and whatever, and tells me who's in the room and so on and so forth. 9 times out of 10, those entities that are helping these individuals who consider themselves to be psychic are not necessarily working for the psychic. So that entity will give you the information that they want to give to you, which will in all cases, will steer the psychic off the path and have them thinking that there's a lot of different things going on in that space that aren't going on. And they're never going to tell you that that ghosts work more or less for a guild. On the other side of things, it's very much like corporations, like business. So because you don't see it that way, it's because they don't want you to see it that way. And and the whole thing is set up to tweak the first emotion that consciousness will get, usually when they get wrangled from the light, in other words, the supreme universe, and pulled in or tricked into the dense realm. One of the things they do, they start breaking you down, breaking your consciousness down. They inject negative and low vibrating emotions like fear and anger and hate and so on and so forth. But the first one is always fear. Boom. Because as you know, in this realm, that fear causes many people to do things that they won't necessarily do if they didn't have that fear bug going on. Okay. So with that, I think I'm going to jump from this. Actually, there's something that I just said that you might want some clarification on. You can let me know right now. This includes you guys who are assisting here. There's something that I said that you want a little bit more, or is not totally clear enough for you. You can let me know, and I'll try to elaborate. But usually how forums go, I will repeat myself in future forums anyway. I'll cover, this aspect of the question, and then the next 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, sometimes down the line, then I'll pick it up again, depending on whether it has any bearings on, what I'm talking about in the next forum or the forum after that. Okay. So with that, no one's saying anything, so we're just going to go ahead and move along to the next question.
Why only a few people here are able to see the other side?
Oh, okay, well, okay. So it's like a sister question to the original question. That one of the things having to do with the eyes, that you're all looking through, is that I kind of jokingly call these eyes that everyone has here in Matrix factory eyes. It's like when you buy a new car, there's like factory, what is it called? Add-ons, factory add-ons that the company, puts on the vehicle and so on and so forth. These eyes that we have are factory eyes. So my vision started to shift into the point where I don't necessarily see right now the dense the density that everyone else is looking at right now with their factory eyes. But when my vision started to shift, it started to shift in a really weird way, where it's, I don't know if I said it last time, that the avatar and everything that you're interacting with, for the most part, is made up of what I call black ooze. And those of you who've been, with me for a while, you know what that means. I don't have to explain what black ooze is. It's made up of a very dense material. So your body is like a vehicle that is made up of black ooze. And your consciousness is the person who comes and sits in the vehicle and drives it around. So you may think, the reality is that you may be a passenger in that avatar. And something dense is actual, and I've used this term before also. I think it's on either my website or maybe a Facebook or something like that, where I call those attachments. I'm calling them attachments, but I'm starting to change how I think about the whole concept of attachments. So there's would be a key individual that jockeys your vehicle around. Almost like, let's say they're the driver and you're a passenger. And the only reason you're in this vehicle is because you're also not only a passenger, you're the battery that runs the vehicle. So the dense entity that's in there, it can be affected by some aspect of your personality, because you're going to retain some kind of personality, if from your higher consciousness that is very much connected to supreme consciousness. But they weaken you to the point where you may have a very logical way of looking at something, or there's some decisions to be made, and the driver, who's in there just to cause trouble anyway, the driver, it's like joy riding your vehicle a lot of the times, or if someone, with joyride, when these kids would steal cars and just drive them all over the place, and places where, cars aren't supposed to even be driven or whatever. And you're sitting there, and your higher consciousness is kind of like, I would say maybe horrified or whatever, or just really frustrated that they're in this vehicle, but they don't have any control as to exactly where it goes. They can suggest, why don't we go, in this direction, because the road is more, more even there. And this one is like, well, I think we're going to just drive across this field with all these rocks and things like that, even though your vehicle is not at all, a four-wheel drive or off road vehicle. And hopefully this is all making sense anyway. So with that, I understood that just by looking at things when my eyes started to shift and seeing these squares and so on and so forth, that the information starts to come through with what I experienced, and it was telling me that I really had not a whole lot of control over what I saw and how I saw it before light beams came in and started shifting my vision. And that's what really happened in the end. Light beams came in and started shifting, because that's what was supposed to happen in my experience here, so that I can continue to do the work that I'm doing now. So one of the other things that was kind of interesting is that, like I said, I'm seeing these grids, and the further an object goes away from me, the larger the squares, the closer the tighter the square is, to the point where I pulled them quite close to my eyes, and they were these really small. All of a sudden, it was a small square, a series of small squares. It was as though I don't know if I guess I still use projectors. They used to use like slide projectors and so on and so forth, or even just like a old style film camera that projects an image on a wall. And if any of you have experienced that, you take the camera, and then the closer you walk to the wall, towards the surface of the wall, the smaller the image gets. So if you're right up on the wall, the image is very, very small. So something similar was happening when I would pull that paper close, it was though the imagery of the matrix was being projected through my eyes. Now, how that works, maybe we might be able to get some visitors in who can literally help work out exactly why that is. They might not exactly know, how that works either, but all I knew was that this is like this is like I'm projecting the imagery through the eyes of my avatar. Which, you think about that, well, but everyone's looking at the same thing. Well, you're not looking, no two people are looking at the exact same thing. It's like, how does one person, well, as far as like people who are colorblind, for instance, and a lot of times it means that some individuals can't see colors like yellow or green or something like that, but they see all the other colors. So even if you see red, you may be seeing a certain frequency of red that the next person is not seeing. So your red may be a deep cherry red. This other person's red may be a little bit more pastel, or even a little closer to pink, but not quite pink. So to think that everyone's seeing seeing things from the same eyes, or same type of eyes, nothing is created even here. Nothing is created equally created here, and that's I would say maybe in a larger sense, yeah, they like that because it makes you uncertain. You're not certain about anything, so they can run around and do all these different things, but you're not certain because density is not going to tell you exactly what's going on with what you're seeing and what you're not seeing and why you're seeing it a certain way and so on and so forth. Or as the question was stating, that some people can see the other side and others don't see the other side. So again, everything that you're experiencing is part of the dense entity. I think I used the term monopoly game or something like that last time. So the dense realm is like being in a board game or a computer game or something like that. And anyone these days have at least played video games. And you know how it is when you're into a video game, you kind of lose yourself in there. It's like, for a lot of us, including myself, I used to use certain video games as just an escape when I was finished, like doing all this work, to make money, to buy the house and take care of everything. And then when I was tired of, some people, they go out and they get drunk or whatever, or they just hang out and they drink, they go to sports events and all these other things to escape. Me, I wasn't so much into drinking and getting drunk and so on and so forth. And some of it was had to do with just me saving money because I buy a game and I could just play that game every weekend or whatever and not spend any more money than the $30 I paid for the game. And then I would have individuals considered to be friends or whatever will call me up and say, hey, you want to go out and get some beers? And I said, no, I don't drink, for one. They used to have a friend who would call me up like twice a year, maybe just to test to see if I had started drinking again or something like that. But I'll say, hey, you want to get some beers? I said, I don't drink anymore. I said, well, what do you do for fun? I said, well, at that particular point in time, I kind of have some video games I play and stuff like that. I said, really? That's gotta be boring. I said, well, it's not as expensive as going to bars and paying for beers. And also, going to bars, and I might have talked, I'm quite sure I did talk about that in the past, and some form, that you go to a bar and all of a sudden you're in this zone of all these other individuals with their jockeys and their attachments and so on and so forth. And believe you me, someone will say, well, he's got an entity in him. So, the entity singular? No. It's just that the dominant entity, that's the one that's in there that you feel, that you may feel. Some people identify with their dense jockey to the point where they hear voices in their head, but they just think that those are their own thoughts. But sometimes those thoughts are telling them to do some whack stuff. And say, well, or even if you're with a group of individuals, their jockeys are interacting with each other without you even knowing. So their jockeys are interacting with your jockey, but you're not aware of it. But also in the matrix, how they get over is that they get you to ignore certain feelings that you have. You may run into individuals who are involved in the metaphysical or whatever, and a lot of them, excuse me, a lot of them who are legit psychics will tell you, certain things, and there's a whole lot of them who aren't really legit psychics, and psychic in the sense that being able to really read what's going on the other side. I would say that everyone has the capacity to be psychic in the sense that, like I said, you walk into a room and you feel something, that you don't see, but you feel something. But if you're really tuned into the system, you'll shut yourself down. Where it's like, oh, no, really, that's my imagination. But who's telling you that's your imagination? Is it your jockey, or is it, your contaminated higher consciousness? That's the tricky part of it. I'm still delving into how those interactions work. And I usually, when you're so connected to your jockey or the attachments, other attachments as well, I call it being interlaced within one another, to the point where whatever personality that you do have from your higher consciousness does not delineate from the voices that come from the jockeys and the other attachments, so to speak. I'm just using the word attachments loosely. And I do believe in the last session I did talk about your body being, like an apartment building, and each apartment has individuals in those, in those apartments. And then there's like the president of the board, which may be the jockey. That's the one that pretty much keeps all the other ones in line, while he or she, steers you around, collecting the essence from all of the stuff that they get you involved in, and all the uncomfortable things that they get you involved in. Because that's their job. So basically, this is a energy feeding factory, and that's what Earth is. Has been for a very, very long time. That's not what Dunya Gaia Earth was initially meant to be. Okay, just like all of you came from, I call the real, from Supreme Universe, from Supreme Consciousness. But when you get put into this realm, you're tricked into it a lot of times, because when you're out in the real, no one's lying about anything. So if someone tells you, that there's a large tree, in this particular area, you're going to believe it because human beings don't lie to each other. What's the point? Because really, it's like lying to yourself. And what's the point of lying to yourself? Which people do all the time.
Yeah.
But again, that's if you're interwoven with with the density, you do end up lying to yourself, because the density that your jockey is controlling how you think about things. So if you think in terms of like public school or college or any of these things, it's all programming, and that's not an original thought. And there's been others who talked about the educational systems on the planet being houses of programming, primarily just to keep you, and I haven't used this term that much in the more recent time, keep you in the chicken coop, keep you stuck in the box that they basically put you in. All right. So I think I might have taken that far enough. But again, if anyone feels that there's you want me to clarify on any of this, you can speak up now, or you can just take a note, and then you can just send it to to us before the next forum, and then I will address it.
Hi,
Okay.
Chief.
Yes,
Mimosa here.
I will say.
I wanted to ask, how does it work when you see like things from the other realm with your mind's eye? Is it something like physical, or is the higher consciousness seeing it?
No, a good, very good question, actually. So, hold that thought. Okay, well, before I started, there were beings from the other side, and you've experienced, and you know that they're very active, very real, and very vocal at times. So
Yes.
some said that they're going to be joining. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So this is their intro. Usually, when you hear that kind of noise, and a lot of times that's considered a language. And I think I said that last time, last forum. So, can you answer? Any of you guys, can you answer Mimosa's question? Come on, translate.
Sorry, I kind of was listening,
Mm-hmm.
but
In other words, what part of you are seeing or sensing? So again, if you're in, if well, they'll join in when they feel like they actually have something to say. So if you're interwoven, you don't really know what part of you is actually seeing. And you're, most of you are saying seeing the other side, seeing things on the other side.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, if you're not sure exactly if again, if your higher consciousness, what's of it, which is not a whole lot. Because if your higher consciousness was at its full strength, there's no way that it's going to listen to density.
I can help a little.
Okay, someone said that they can help a little.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, some of the images are real, but some of them are fake too. That
Mhm.
we.
Well, the question is, in this type of scenario, the situation where you're born into the matrix, everything that you know about primarily comes from the matrix, all the surface stuff. And what schools are for, and so on, and colleges, all these things are just to keep you working for the matrix, giving off your essence to the hierarchy and the density. So, is this really, and you've heard people say this is a holographic existence. That's a simplified way of looking at what this existence is. It's not as solid as you may think. So when you think about it's something real, it's almost like, oh, is this solid? Can I touch it? If I can touch it, then it's real. The reality of the matter is, if you're vibrating at a certain frequency, and everything in the matrix is vibrating at that similar frequency, you touch it, it feels real to you. Now, density, they can look at the same wall you're touching, and they'll walk through it. So is it real for the density who's walking? Is that wall real, to the density who can walk through it? And it does work that way. It has to do with frequency, how things vibrate. I think, and I know for a fact that was some years ago, I did a forum, and I talked about when I used to have sleep paralysis and out of body, I would say involuntary out of body experiences. And this one time, I'm in that state where I'm there, and it's called, so-called sleep paralysis. But I got to the point where I could actually like move an arm, but still not come out of the paralysis. So I just, I got more comfortable with it. I stopped fretting so much at that time because I know a hell of a lot more now than I did then. But I knew a lot back then, I realized as well. So there was a sideboard next to my bed. And, when I would see my hands, when I pulled them out of my body, out of my avatar, my hands were just nothing but sparkles. The hands shaped like sparkles. And so I would touch the sideboard, solid, felt very solid, even for my etheric, energetic arm and hand. And I said, I said, well, how is it that, things on the other side can pass through so-called solid, solid items and walls and so on and so forth. So I put my hands on the sideboard and I put a little pressure. And then I said, well, what if I put a little bit more pressure? And then boom, my hand went right through the sideboard. So that's interesting. So I pulled my hands, back, my etheric hand, and then I felt the sideboard. I could still see it, out of the corner of my eye. And I didn't see a physical hole, but when I touched it with my etheric hand, there was a hole there where my hand went through. Where my hand did go through, it still felt solid. So literally, I changed the frequency on whatever level of that sideboard with my hand. So almost literally similar to how density creates doorways. They may come up to a wall, and is that something you guys can help me with? They come up to a wall, and then they just push through. And there, all of a sudden, you have a doorway that they come in and out. Now, not all doorways are created that way. There are doorways that are created when people transition. And depending on how they transition, whether it's something that's very, very difficult, excuse me, something very difficult, determines on whether how big that doorway is going to be or that vortex is going to be. So if you have a situation, and I know I'm kind of moving around with this, is just using my style, where there's a lot of war and a lot of transitioning, I should say. Because density on the other side, they don't really see it that you're dying. They're just seeing that you're changing in other words, your frequency from being able to be in an avatar to being outside of an avatar, in the in-between realms. And you may be designated to basically keep coming back as a human. But again, when you come back, you have all these other things, again, loosely attachments on you. Sometimes they all come back to the next expression, but every time they come back, they gather more members, more attachments. Okay, my thought just went up. Okay, having to do again with so there's a what do you call it? Any place that's war torn, more or less, or a battlefield. And there are individuals who like to go to like Gettysburg, or there was a client who went to the killing fields in Cambodia. And there's all these doorways there. She might not, and the people with her may not see the entities on the other side who are, milling. Well, I shouldn't say they're milling around. They show up usually if there's food. So all these doorways where someone got killed and died. And then the level of intensity of their death, again, creates a larger doorway. The more horror, the larger the doorway. Is that correct for you guys? Come on.
Yes.
You said yes. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of doorways there.
And there's doorways. There's doorways everywhere, but they're not all functioning anymore. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, because light beings have been taking care of that stuff. Where literally a lot of doorways now are traps. That's why it also mirrors our doorways as well. But when I do a house clearing, I will cover that mirror with my own grid. And if anything just hits that grid, trying to, the words come from where they normally come from, and and jump into your space, which to them they never worried about it because there was no one here who could figure out what they were doing. But when I put the grid, my own grid there, light grid, they hit that grid and they're whisked to a place where density basically traps them. So again, when individuals at times when they're experiencing some kind of poltergeist activity or ghost activity in a house, a lot of times they'll ask if someone died. This is for regular people who would even think that way. There are individuals who are just like, nothing, I don't believe in no ghosts or whatever. And they're walking around and their jockey say, you don't believe in any ghosts, you don't believe in ghosts. Yeah, I don't believe in ghosts. You know. And this could branch off in different directions. But one of the things that happens also, they get bored with their job at times. So what happens with I don't know what you do when you get bored and you're doing a job that's just kind of like the same thing, similar thing over and over again, because it's never exactly the same, but it's similar. Okay, another individual to it's like another cow to milk at the dairy farm. They're milking different cows, but the job is the same. So what happens? They'll start to entertain themselves, and sometimes the stuff they do can be kind of funny if you're not afraid, and just see what they're doing. Where they'll make some noise, and somebody goes running down the stairs. Who's there? Whatever, and they look around. There's no one there. Okay, I must be hearing things, which is probably exactly you're hearing things. They go back up to where they, to the room, whatever, and then they wait till they get back. You get back into your room, and then they make the noise again. And they run down again. There's various ways that they do it. There's like mimics, those who will mimic. There's stories about individuals showing, having someone knocking on their front door with a boom, 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 like the cops are trying to get in. And they will go and they'll look out, if they can look out the window, they look out the window, there's somebody there. So as soon as they get to the door, they look out, then it stops. And of course, then the jockey says, you're losing your mind. Yeah, I must be losing my mind. You go back to your bedroom or whatever, get back into whatever you're doing, and then boom, 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 boom. You go back down. So they'll do the stuff, and also it serves a purpose because each time you go down, you get a little more creeped out. Which every time you get creeped out, you're puffing out essence. It's all about essence. So they figure, well, we can have some fun and get essence, can't we? Let's see what we can do to this individual or that individual. They love people who are just really on edge all the time. Who just walk into a place, they feel it, and they immediately get frightened. And a lot of times they won't say, excuse me, sorry. And a lot of times they won't say anything to, people who are accompanying them there, unless they consider themselves to be paranormal investigators or something. They're looking for some kind of sensation, which can be kind of funny also. They walk into this abandoned factory or an old abandoned house or something like that. They walk in, they trip the tripwire, and then the ghosts from the guild show up, and they start their thing like peeking out from around corners and things like that. And then so I thought I saw something. So there are individuals again. Even the paranormal investigators are walking around with jockeys. It's just a game to them. It's just a game to the density. And also, they like stories. Just like you like a good movie or a good book. They like stories. They create stories all the time. Each and every one of you have a script, but it's not fixed, okay? So it's not like, you're going to take 10 steps this way, 5 steps that way, and then, so on and so forth. They interfere with one another, they interact with one another, and sometimes they throw another person's script off because it's conflicting with this other person's script. You meet, there's a lot of times there's a small circle of people that you will know through your life. You may meet a lot of different people, but the people that you may be the most intimate with or you see the most are usually part of and you're part of their script. So things may interact in a certain way, but there's nothing saying that another group of density won't come in with their crew. And sometimes they do come in, and they will steal from the other crew of density. They will hijack your people sometimes, like possession. It's like, nature on the planet emulates what goes on in the dense realm. So think of it this way, that there's predators, of course. So there's a lion, or or lionesses who usually do the hunting for the pride. And what do? They look for food, and they're going to look for the most vulnerable one to take down and feast on. And a lot of times, which was kind of, I used to like a lot of the nature shows when I was a kid. And then it was like Mutual of Omaha or something. I forgot what the name of the program. But they would show some fighting and something or whatever, or maybe I don't recall, but they might have, like animals eating one another and things like that. But not so graphic back then. This was like back in the '60s or maybe in the early '70s, but mostly like in the '60s. But later on, they started showing more graphic stuff. The thing that would really, really just like tear up a sister unit would be seeing a young antelope. I don't know if they call them calves or whatever. With the group of antelopes, and then the lions or the leopards or the tigers or whatever else would show up and stalk them. And if they weren't alert enough, they'll get in there and they had some kind of success, but they would literally attack the weakest, which would be the youngest or the oldest. You know, so when it would attack the youngest, you're watching this and you go, "Oh my goodness, that's really awful." But what's happening when you're being affected that way? You're pumping out all this essence. And maybe your jockey decided, let's watch this show. I gotta meet my quota. How are we gonna meet our quota? Well, this particular program has some really, intense stuff that the this person's higher conscience is really, is kind of squeamish about. So, but we need to get, we need to, in other words, milk the cow. So you'll end up, watching something that will cause you to just puff out some essence. People who like watching horror films, slasher films. And there's a lot of them who just like, oh my goodness, but I really like horror films. So, do you really like horror films? Or is your jockey telling you, hey, we like horror films? Even if it just really scares the crap out of you and you can't sleep after watching something like that. Because if you watch it and it, frightens you or whatever, there goes that essence. And density has ways, there's a lot of different ways of collecting all of that fear essence, all of that nervousness essence, all of whatever essence. Insecurity essence after you've watched, the show and then, okay, it's time to go to bed or whatever. Excuse me, sorry. And a lot of times, you're not able to, you're not able to sleep with certain people, after watching something like that. And I don't know if anyone even questions themselves. They say, okay, I like watching these kinds of movies, but I really have a hard time sleeping at night. And don't question, why do I? Oh, maybe I just like being afraid. It's like, I don't know if you're necessarily like being afraid, but you're just serving a purpose. You're basically, in other words, walking when I was a kid, lived out in rural Michigan, and there was some man that my father knew who had a dairy farm. So I was able to, visit every so often, and they would have these rigs hooked up or whatever, these stalls or whatever, with these cows in these stalls. Sometimes they had actually a milking machine. So it wasn't like, when we went there was a bunch of people, squeezing the udders and milking the cows. But literally, you're part of that, of the dairy, really. You might as well say that you're one of the cows being milked when you're watching, or when they're watching these horror films, and they just keep watching the next one and so on and the next one. Now, I watched a number of them because I was testing myself. Because when I was younger, stuff scared the crap out of me. Made me uncomfortable, which was kind of weird. It would make me uncomfortable when when it would just come and show itself. I didn't have the same kind of like paralyzing fear. It's almost like it's discomfort, but an observation of what was going on, what was trying to haunt me, what was, trying to scare the essence out of me. They successfully got essence out of me when I was a kid, for sure. But because of why I came and who I am, like everyone is different. No one of you is exactly the same. If anyone says, "Oh, people are the same," they should just pull their heads out of their rectums, because no two people are the same. And there are some of you that I had showed you the skill of show me the real, where in your mind's eye you actually see what that person looks like under their physical human glamour. And for some reason, that one works pretty well. Anyone can try it. So, you just look at someone that you know and say, "Show me the real." And in your mind's eye, if you're focusing, you don't have to like strain yourself to focus either. You start to see what they really look like. And I think it's one of the Pirates of the Caribbean, where I used to have this picture in my one of my studios when I was having clients come in, where Davy Jones' locker or something, I forgot what it was. But anyway, all the characters on the boat were like part sea creature or something. The one main character, I forgot this guy's name. This one actor was pretty well known, but he was like the captain of the pirate ship, and his beard was literally like an octopus with tentacles. And I said, "Wow, that's really creative." But show me the real on anyone and see what you see. There's some weird stuff there that defies your own imagination. There are individuals who look at their own mom and say, "Well, I see some spider legs coming out from behind her." Yeah. And all of a sudden she just transforms into something that doesn't even look like what she looks like in the Matrix. So we're all walking around. So again, you're talking about what's real and what isn't. It's like we're all walking around in the Matrix with I wouldn't say a fixed glamour. Sometimes maybe it seems like it's a fixed glamour, but with a glamour of, of what I look like every time you see me with your factory eyes. I always look like who I am, maybe depending on how long ago, sorry, depending on how long ago you may have seen me, I'll be in maybe an older version of who you remember me to be. But either way, I still look like that person for the most part. There are individuals who start to, they call it aging, but it's like a certain built-in deterioration button. That as soon as you come into the matrix, from child, grow up, almost like mold spores. I don't know if you ever seen like a fast forward image of like how mold will affect, a slice of bread or a peach or something like that. And you see it just like from its beginnings, little white spots or whatever, and then it just grows and grows depending on what kind of mold. Sometimes they have like these long little like strands or whatever, and then they get to a certain point, and then they collapse, and 9 times out of 10 they'll discolor or whatever it is that they're on, and a lot of times it'll turn black, like black ooze. So if you look at the existence of humans in that sense, in the way that density, in other words, put you here, you come into these avatars, and these avatars are literally I should say, has the coding for that, for aging. You, as a consciousness, really in your purest form, you don't age. There's no time in the real. They say, "Well, explain that to me." That's not going to be that easy to explain to those who are trapped in the matrix. But there are individuals who try to figure it out. They talk about time and time not being real, and whether time is linear and so on and so forth. These are all distractions, because on the other side, they know exactly what's going on. They know exactly what's happening with your avatar, that, it's designed to do like, like most, most sports. You grow, reach a certain point, and then decline. There's some other things that have to do with also how they deteriorate the avatar as well, and I'm not going to touch on that in this particular forum. It will probably come in a future forum. Okay. All right. So with that, I'm going to move to the next question, and just take a note of anything that I said that you're not really clear on. Take that note and send that, what you don't understand or what you would like me to elaborate on. Send that to us. Okay. Okay. Now, what's our next question?
Sure.
Oh, is that the hour's up?
5:05.
5:05. Okay. I think I might start to, as I get more comfortable again, because I'm getting my legs again doing forums. Then I might start to expand it. The time. Longer and longer. Hopefully it won't be like some of the ones I was going well over 2 hours and so on and so forth. But I'm going to wrap this up right now because I think I'm ending on a nice flow. And thanks everyone for coming, showing up. Hopefully you get what you want out of this, and more likely what you need, because I'm also talking to your jockeys. Your subconscious, so to speak. Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you again. And I'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
You're welcome.